There was a pond not far from the house I grew up in, hidden just beyond a tree line, about half a mile down an old dirt path. Locals called it Carson's Pond, though no one ever seemed to know who Carson actually was. It wasn't maintained. There were no signs, no fences, no fishing regulations. Just a murky stretch of water, encircled by forest. It became my personal escape. Whenever I had a day off, I'd drag my old kayak down there, cast a line, and let the silence settle in around me. It was one of those hazy, late summer afternoons, the kind where the air clings to your skin and the sun seems permanently stuck in the sky. Around 3 p.m., I reached the pond, untied my kayak, and paddled out to the center, the sweet spot, where I'd always had the best luck fishing. I anchored the kayak by looping a cord around a buried pole I'd installed weeks earlier and let myself drift slightly with the breeze. After about 10 minutes of casting, I noticed someone step out of the trees across the pond. That was rare. Most days, it was just me. He didn't wave or call out, just climbed into a dented aluminum boat tethered to the shoreline, picked up a single oar, and began rowing slowly toward the center, toward me. When he was close enough for conversation, I offered a polite, nice day, huh? Yeah, he replied, just that, flat, monotone. His face didn't match his words. Something in his eyes felt off. He was older, maybe mid-50s. Long, wiry gray hair under a dirty ball cap. A torn flannel clung to his shoulders, sleeves rolled unevenly. The boat bumped against mine with a dull clank. You fish? I asked, trying to maintain some kind of normal energy. Number, I don't fish. I waited for him to say something else. He didn't. His boat stayed pressed against mine, gently rocking us both as if tethered together. I gave a slight nudge with my oar, but he didn't move. He just kept looking at me, not even pretending to look away when I caught him. Trying to shake the tension, I asked, "So, you live around here?" He pointed vaguely over his shoulder to the wooded ridge behind him. Suffolk side, I clarified. No. The silence between us felt like a vice. I turned to face the water again, pretending to check my line, but my body was tense. My gut told me something was wrong. I started inching my way toward the shoreline, trying to make it seem casual, like I was repositioning for better casting, but the man started rowing too, matching my direction, matching my pace. My breath started to catch in my throat. What a great day, right? I asked again, forcing a shaky smile. That time, he didn't answer. Instead, he lifted his flannel, just enough for me to see what was tucked into his waistband, a black pistol. "I don't think you should leave," he said quietly. I froze. My body refused to move. My eyes darted from the gun to the tree line. We were still in the middle of the pond. No one would hear me scream. No one ever came here. But adrenaline is a strange thing. It can hit like a freight train when you least expect it. The second he turned slightly to shift in his seat, I launched myself off the kayak and into the water. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just kicked with everything I had, aiming for the shallow edge on the north side. Mud slapped against my hands and knees as I clawed my way out of the water and sprinted through the woods, soaked and trembling, branches tearing at my shirt. I didn't stop until I was home. I locked every door and window, pulled down every blind. My heart was still racing, like it hadn't realized I was safe yet. For hours, I sat crouched behind the dining room window, peeking through the narrow gap in the curtains, watching the woods. I didn't call the police. Not at first. I still don't know why. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe I didn't want to believe it really happened. All I knew was that I wasn't going back there. Night fell. I kept all the lights off and tried to convince myself it was over, but it wasn't. Sometime around 11:30 p.m., just as I started drifting off in my bed upstairs, I heard something outside. Dry leaves crunching, slow, measured. I sat up, frozen. Then came the voice, familiar, calm, too calm. "Hey buddy, you up there? You asleep already?" My chest locked up. My mouth went dry. It was him. I slid out of bed, knees wobbling, and crawled on all fours out of my room. I didn't turn on any lights, didn't dare make a sound. I slipped into the kitchen and grabbed the phone, curling behind the counter to stay hidden. Told them someone was on my property, armed, possibly trying to break in. Every second felt like 10. Every creak of the house made me flinch. I kept waiting to hear the sound of glass shattering, or worse, that voice again, but closer. Finally, red and blue lights flashed through the curtains. The police swept the area, combed the nearby woods, They didn't find anyone. They said I should stay somewhere else for a while. So I did. The next day, I packed a bag and moved in with my cousin across town. I didn't tell my neighbors what happened. I didn't go back to the pond, not even to collect my kayak. I didn't want to be anywhere near that place. A week passed, then 2. I thought maybe that was the end of it. But on the 3rd week, I got a knock at the door. It was the police again. They had arrested a man wandering the woods behind a different property just a few miles away. He was carrying a handgun, along with rope and duct tape. They couldn't tie him to me directly, but they asked me to look at a photo. It was him. Same gray hair, same hat, same dead-eyed stare. They never figured out his full story. He gave a fake name, no record, no missing persons connected to him. Just another ghost drifting through the back roads, looking for someone who wouldn't be missed. I've never been fishing alone since. Not once. It was supposed to be a relaxing getaway, just a weekend on the water with family. My brother-in-law Logan had invited me to join him, my sister Vanessa, and 2 of his friends on a fishing trip. Logan came for money. Everything he owned screamed luxury. Ever since Vanessa married him, she'd been swept into that lifestyle. Big house by the bay, high-end cars, and now a yacht named Lacey after her. We set off early that Saturday morning, the boat stocked with enough food to last a week. Logan had even installed a barbecue grill on the deck, because of course he had. They were grilling burgers before noon and cracking beers even earlier. It was that kind of trip. I was only 17, so Vanessa kept scolding me every time I reached for a drink. Typical. The fishing was slow. Logan managed to catch one largemouth bass, and of course he wouldn't shut up about it. The rest of us just sipped soda, or beer, depending on who you asked, and lounged under the sun. For all the glitz, I was already getting bored. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, Logan fired up the grill again. The sky turned a hazy orange, and the water shimmered like glass. The scene was peaceful, at least on the surface, but even then, something about the setting felt off, a kind of eerie calm. After dinner, the drinks were flowing harder. Logan and his friends were blitzed. Vanessa was buzzed but still coherent, and I'd managed to sneak a few beers myself without her noticing. The music was blasting, the lights dimmed, and someone suggested a game of Cards Against Humanity inside the cabin. I joined, mostly just to escape the sound of Logan's cackling laugh echoing over the water. That's when we heard it. Voices outside, 2 men yelling for help. Logan fumbled to pause the music, and we all rushed to the side of the boat. There, in the darkness, a tiny dinghy floated beside us. 2 men stood inside. Both looked to be South Asian and middle-aged. They were soaking wet and looked panicked. We ran out of gas. One of them called up, "No food left. Please, can you help?" Everyone looked at me. Logan was far too gone to make a decision. Vanessa was cautious. I felt that knot in my stomach. Something didn't sit right with me, but how could I say no? Logan, trying to be the hero, got up to grab the ladder, but stumbled and spilled his beer all over the deck. I helped him steady it while the 2 men climbed aboard. They thanked us, barely smiling. Logan offered them the leftover burgers from the counter, which they devoured without hesitation. One of them asked directly, "Do you have any gasoline?" Logan handed over a spare canister from the storage. I felt relieved when they finally climbed back down and drifted off into the dark. We turned in not long after. Logan and Vanessa got the bedroom, and I crashed on the rock-hard couch in the main cabin with his 2 friends. I couldn't sleep. My back ached, the room was stuffy, and I had a weird pit in my stomach I couldn't shake. Eventually, I got up to get some water and to take a leak over the side of the boat, like Logan had insisted earlier to conserve water. I stepped out onto the deck and was met not with silence, but the unmistakable, low rumble of a boat engine. It was faint, but definitely there. I climbed to their upper deck and flipped on the searchlight, swinging it in a wide arc over the dark water. For a moment there was nothing. Then, boom, there it was, that same dinghy from earlier, creeping back toward us. At that exact moment, a scream rang out from inside the cabin. I jumped down and ran back inside. One of Logan's friends was pale as a sheet, standing in the corner and shaking. The other guy had jolted awake and looked just as scared. There were 2 men, right over me, the first guy stammered. They were just standing there, staring down at me. Vanessa and Logan burst out of the bedroom. We all rushed outside to find the men, but the deck was empty. The boat, their boat, was gone, vanished into the night. I told them what I'd seen. Everyone sobered up fast. We searched the whole boat. Logan's wallet was missing. So were the spare gas canisters. That was it. No damage. Nothing else stolen. Still, Logan insisted we cut the trip short. We sped back to the marina, navigating the dark waters for hours. Once we made it back to his house, we checked everything. Doors, windows, the backyard. Everything seemed untouched. Logan had the locks changed the next morning. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. 2 weeks later, Logan's home security system captured something chilling. 2 hooded figures walking up to his front door around 3 a.m. One of them tried the handle. When it didn't open, they quickly turned and disappeared. The footage wasn't high res, but the size and posture. It looked like the same 2 men from the boat. They hadn't come for help that night. That much was obvious now. They came to see who they were dealing with, and they came back. Logan filed a police report, but without any concrete evidence, no license plate, no clear image, the case didn't go anywhere. I haven't gone fishing since. I don't like boats anymore, and if I ever see someone drifting toward me on the water again, yelling for help, I don't care who it is, I'm not letting them on board. I was 21 when I finally agreed to go fishing with my grandfather Morris. He was 84, and honestly, the toughest man I knew. Not tough in the loud or intimidating way, but in that quiet, I've seen things kind of way. He didn't talk much, but when he did, you listened. I grew up hearing about his lake, some remote, unnamed body of water tucked away in the dense woods of our state. According to him, no one else fished there, and he always came home with coolers full of fish. I used to think he was exaggerating. That changed the day he asked me to come along. We drove over an hour out of town, leaving behind the paved roads and streetlights, until the houses gave way to nothing but forest. The Jeep rattled down a narrow dirt trail, every bump knocking my teeth together. I asked him if we were close. He just nodded. Finally, we pulled over at what looked like a dead end. No signs, no paths, just thick woods. He grabbed the back end of a folded aluminum boat and motioned for me to take the front. Without a word, we started carrying it through the brush. 2 miles. That's how long we carried that boat. Through uneven ground, branches slapping us in the face, swarms of mosquitoes. I was sweating buckets, and Morris, not a complaint, not a pause, just quiet breathing and steady steps. I didn't dare ask to stop. I didn't want to look soft. When we finally made it to the lake, it was surreal. The trees curved over the shoreline like they were hiding it from the world. The water was so still it looked like a sheet of glass. No birds, no insects, just silence. We pushed off the bank, paddling slowly to the center. Morris showed me how to set the hook, how to bait the line, all that stuff. Then, he went silent again, his eyes locked on the water like something might rise up at any second. At first, I tried to make small talk, but it felt out of place, like speaking too loudly in a church. About 10 minutes in, I turned around to ask him something, and noticed he was leaning over the side of the boat. "Everything good?" I asked. No response. He didn't move, just stared into the water like he was hypnotized. I assumed maybe he saw a big fish or something. I let him be and cast my line, but then I looked back and he was leaning even further, almost like he was about to fall in. "Morris." I reached out and grabbed his shoulder. That's when I heard it, splashing. Not from him, from something else, directly below where he was looking. And then, he shoved something, hard, into the water. "Paddle," he barked. "Now." I froze. "Paddle," he roared. I never heard him raise his voice before. Not like that. I didn't ask questions. I just started rowing. My arms burned, the boat rocked, but he didn't take his eyes off the water. Not once. As soon as we hit the shore, he jumped out, moving faster than I thought possible for someone his age. He didn't even try to grab the boat or gear. He just ran. I scrambled after him, heart pounding in my throat. The hike back to the Jeep felt like hours. The entire time, I kept asking what happened, what he saw, if he was okay. He just stared ahead, breathing heavy, shaking his head like he was trying to forget something that had just been burned into his brain. It wasn't until we were 10 minutes into the drive home that he finally spoke. "I saw it," he said. At first, I thought it was a log, but it started moving. "What do you mean, it?" I asked, still out of breath. It had a face, he whispered. A face under the water, close enough to see the eyes, pale skin. No fish has a face like that. I didn't know what to say. I thought maybe he was having some kind of episode, but then he added something else, something that made my blood run cold. It reached for me. I looked over at him. His sleeve was wet and torn. I didn't imagine it, he said. It grabbed my arm, cold as ice. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, thinking about his expression. Wide eyes, trembling hands. This wasn't just some fishing trip gone wrong. Something had scared him, truly scared him. The next morning, I found him in the garage. He had a hunting knife in one hand and a stack of gear in the other. He looked like he was getting ready for war. "You going back there?" I asked. "Not to fish," he said. He never elaborated, never told me what he did, or if he even made it back to the lake. But I know this, he never fished again. Not once. Not after that day. Months later, after he passed away, I went through his things. In one of the locked drawers of his desk, I found an old, faded journal. Most of it was about fishing, times, weather conditions, types of bait. But toward the back were a few entries written in shaky, almost illegible handwriting. One entry stood out. "Something lives in that lake. It's not a fish. It watches. It waits. I've seen it more than once, and I think it remembers faces." I closed the journal and never opened it again. I don't tell this story to people. I've tried, but every time I do, they laugh or ask if I was high or making it up. I wasn't. I saw his face when we left that lake. I felt the fear in his voice, and even now, all these years later, I have nightmares, not of drowning, not of being lost, but of a face waiting in the water